Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Daily Six for this week's final episode. We'll pick it up again next week. But today, would you grab Acts chapter 14, a little bit shorter reading today. Acts 14, read verse 19 through 28. Acts 14, 19 through 28. See what God has to say to you as you soak in it, and then come on back and let's see what he has to say to us together. All right, so I say it every week, broken record. Have you paused the video? Have you soaked in it? Listened to God before you listen to me? Acts chapter 14, verses 19 through 28. All right. Man, there's something heavy in here, isn't there? Verse 19. When some of the Jews came from Antioch and Iconium, they won the crowd over. There was all this opposition from the Jews, and they won the crowd over. And they stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city, thinking he was dead. Holy cow, friends. Opposition to Christianity in that early church, and this is even true some other cultures of the world these days. We don't face it like this in America, but the hatred and the viciousness. It's interesting. This has come full circle on Paul's life. You remember from Acts chapter 7 and 8 and 9 that Saul, as a young man, that's who Paul was. His first name was Saul, and then it got changed to Paul after he trusted Christ. This is what he did to people. He had letters from the government to go and arrest Christians and torture them, and he would stone them and execute them. And he was part of the stoning of Stephen in Acts chapter 7. It's a really brutal, barbaric thing that people did back then to each other. It's an awful way to die, right? Being hit with these large rocks and the crowd circling you and so forth, right? So I don't want to gross you out, but I feel like, as we're looking for what normal Christianity is, as we're looking through the book of Acts, like, where do I fit in this story? Man, I get so stressed out over just mere relational awkwardness around non-believers, or I get frustrated that the culture has moved in a direction that my value systems aren't shared by many in our culture, and that just eats at me, causes stress. And it's like the Lord's saying to me right now, man, just let go of how high-strung I am, or how stressed out I get, or how anxious or even frustrated I get at the world around me. Because, friends, this is nothing like it, right? Okay, but here's the other thing that's amazing. Paul was so injured that people trying to kill him thought he was dead. They literally dragged his body out, tossed him aside. So he had to have been unconscious, obviously, probably breathing very, very shallowly, because we learned he actually wasn't dead, right? He hadn't yet died. But then notice this, verse 20. After the disciples gathered around him, he got up and he went back into the city, and the very next day, he and Barnabas left for Derbe. They continued their mission, continued their travels. Wow. I mean, the guy had just been left for dead. He'd been beaten literally within an inch of his life. And the very next day, he's like bouncing up, getting up and going. Now, the text says the disciples gathered around him. It's very likely that they prayed. They gathered around and prayed him. So very likely God's doing a miracle of healing here. But even still, even if he wasn't having to recover from all these wounds because God had supernaturally healed him, we don't know. The text doesn't say that. But even if that were the case, the guy bounces right back up and he's going back at it again. And verse 21, they preached the good news in that city. They won a large number of disciples. Verse 22, strengthening the disciples and encouraging them to remain true to the faith. We must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of God, they said. And Paul and Barnabas go about appointing elders and other leaders in the church. Oh man, I get so self-absorbed when I'm not happy, when things in my life aren't going the way I want them to be, when I'm not feeling good. Maybe I'm, sick in bed, not feeling good or whatever. It's this idea of being focused on strengthening and encouraging other people. Friends, this shows to me, convicts me, that these men of God, Paul, Barnabas, and the others around them, were so in love with the Lord, so so clear on their mission to be used by God in powerful ways. I mean, they were so focused on this that even though there had been this awful torture, this abuse, this terrible near-death experience, bouncing right back up, and they're turning outward again. Oh, beloved, this video is going to end in about a minute. So I want to ask you to give God 6 more minutes. And along with me, this is what I'm doing right now. Examine your hearts. God, I examine my heart. Lord, would you show me where I tend to be too self-absorbed around my own creature comforts and the things that I want out of life? Oh God, would you center me to look past my hardships? Paul said it right there. We must go through many hardships. To enter the kingdom of God, to really experience all that God has for us, we're going to have to go through hardships. God, would you help me to turn outward in the things that I'm facing, the hardships that I'm facing? Would you help me turn outward instead of inward? God, use me on mission. Use me to impact other people as I live selflessly for you. That's my prayer. I hope you're going to do that. Give God another 6 minutes and do some contemplating with the Lord. Think about that. Yield some things to God. And then come on back next week. We're going to pick it up. We're going to pick up Acts 15 and keep moving through the book of Acts next week. So this is it for this week on the Daily 6. Come join us again on Monday. Thanks for hanging with us. Oh, and give God 6 more minutes. Go.